I got that like everywhere. That was what Kelly.
Don't forget.
Do not forget the record.
Okay.
Assuming we are recording, so. Okay, well, I think we will go ahead and get this party started. Welcome, everyone. Glad to see you. As you can see, I am going solo this morning. Kind of feel like I've been co-pilot for a while, and now this is my first.
We have faith in you, Jim.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And I did get the crash course here on Zoom, but by no means do I claim to be a Zoom expert. So I may need to call upon the expertise of all of you that, oh, there she is.
Okay. I was like, should I put it up as a backup?
Good deal. All right.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, well, as is our custom, we will start with introductions here. I will begin. Jim Spear, co-facilitator for the Trinity Collaborative. Carol?
Carol Fall, North Lake, Trinity County Collaborative.
Pete Finney, public member from Weaverville.
Pat Frost, Trinity Center.
23 Forest Service.
Right. Okay, we're gonna go to Zoom here. Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. Sarah Akridge, District Ranger, National Recreation Area.
All right, good morning. Welcome. Jack.
Morning, everybody. Jack Leinhard, Watershed Center Recreation Program Manager. I'm feeling a little under the weather today, but I do have a presentation prepared for talking about the lake trail in a little bit here.
Great. All right, welcome, Jack. Laura.
Hi, Laura Broadhead. I am not at my desk today, so I won't turn my camera on, but I am the Assistant Field Manager for Recreation in the Reading Field Office for the BLM.
Okay. Welcome, one and all. Up next, let's go to our agenda check. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look that over. There are additional agendas and minutes available if you didn't grab one of those, and there's a sign-in sheet if you wouldn't mind signing in there for us. Anybody have any additional agenda items or changes, edits that you'd like to?
So not really edit or changes, but you know, from talking to Kelly, the North Lake Trail kind of proposal that Jack's going to talk to, I think is under partner updates.
Correct. Yep. Okay. Yep. That's right off the top there. Yep.
And we had asked Kelly to, as part of that, to include discussing a letter of support to send to the collaborative.
Right. Yep. Okay, well, not hearing any changes, we will go ahead and roll with the agenda that we have in front of us here. Any comments or edits needed for our collective memory minutes for our September 13th meeting? Not seeing any. Moving right along. So a few follow-up items from the previous meeting. Continue to reach out to Caltrans. Evidently, Kelly shared with me there's just some kind of phone tag going on currently, so we've not yet nailed that down. We will continue to work that and try to get somebody here. Again, as you recall, there's been some questions relative to the Highway 3 turning lanes associated with some of the boat ramps and just some of that work going on at the Stewart's Fork Bridge. So that's going to be a continuing item. Next, we've got the Stewart's Fork boat ramp repairs / proposal to change the Stewart's Fork boat ramp to a day use area. So unfortunately, this did not get carried over to the full, collaborative meeting as we had anticipated. I think it was a victim of timing. Unfortunately, the agenda for that full meeting kind of came out Wednesday, and we discussed it on Friday at the last rec committee meeting, and it just didn't make it over to the full committee agenda. So unfortunately, it did not get presented to the full committee as the rec committee had expected and requested. So we will ensure that next Friday, this item does get brought before the full committee and to see if the full committee would again support the rec committee's recommendation to move forward with changing that management emphasis from a boat ramp to a day use area. So that's kind of the status of that one.
Hey, Jim,
Yes.
I'm curious. So the last I recall on that topic, Ben Sandal said he was going to get back to everyone on the process. I didn't hear about that. Did that happen?
It did not happen, Sarah, because again, it did not get agendized for one, so it wasn't discussed. I think he offered to look into that and make that presentation at the last full, collaborative meeting. And again, it wasn't agendized, it wasn't discussed, so he didn't have an opportunity. With that said, Kelly did have a chance to sit down with him, I believe on Wednesday, and went over a number of issues, one of which was this, and he did indicate he hadn't yet been able to dig into that. But once again, he assured us that he'll do some homework, do some research, and make some type of report on that a week from today at the full committee.
Okay,
was-
great. I just wanted to make sure he wasn't going to be surprised by this conversation, since I know he had raised his hand to be the lead for that.
Yes, no, he is not going to be surprised. So yeah, we'll hopefully get a better understanding of the process at the full meeting a week from today. Moving on, as you recall, this Board of Supervisors letter regarding RAC member appointments was discussed not only here, but at the full committee. And I believe it was reported in the minutes at the last collaborative meeting that the Board of Supervisors was to take this up on their October 1st meeting. Now, I didn't get word from Kelly as to whether or not did it happen occur. Okay, so it's
From Jill, we heard that
okay. So it's been moved on and
out there somewhere.
out there somewhere.
We
Okay,
don't know if it's actually been sent, but
correct.
they did approve it at the meetings.
Okay.
So then there's a process for them to,
Our job is done basically though, right?
yes,
Okay, good. Well, 1 out of 3 ain't bad.
a moot point by now, but yeah.
Okay. We are done with our follow-up items. We are moving on to BLM updates. Laura, are you ready? And I did put out a call to you, Laura. I don't know if you got my message, but I know there's been some bantering about as far as your interest in giving a presentation relative to the newly approved land management plan, resource management plan. Don't know if you're prepared to do that this morning or not, but take it
Yeah.
away, Laura.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so the biggest update is related to our resource management plan. And that is that I think it's going to the Federal Register today, ? I'm sorry, I don't know exactly, but it was delayed at our headquarters level. But I think is going out today, which is good news. That means it is official, starting today, basically. I didn't prepare a presentation just because, if I'm being honest, I didn't know if it was going to happen today or not. Yeah, I can still do that next time. I can also just write something up and send it out. I guess I would kind of leave it up to the subcommittee, like if there is interest in seeing some, I can go through like the designations and things like that. I can also just send out some information in an email on how you can kind of look at it yourself.
Sure. What's the interest of the group here? That'd be of benefit to have her put out something in writing that would kind of give some highlights and overviews?
Yeah, as it relates to recreation.
Yeah, as it relates to recreation, Laura?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I
okay.
can like point out some specific pages you can look at. We have a web map and you can zoom around yourself and kind of explore different areas and different designations. Or I
Yeah,
can
so-
basically present that map and we can go through it together.
Cool. Sounds like a plan. Anything else for us this morning, Laura?
Oh, okay. Sorry, let me just pull up my notes here. The main thing is that the RMP update. Other than that, this is our campground season has come to a close basically. We still have Junction City and Steel Bridge campgrounds open, but they'll close in the next 2 weeks here. I think we closed them the week before Thanksgiving. And they're still getting quite a bit of use. There's been lots of fishing happening on the Trinity this year. I'm sure y'all have noticed. I think just the really nice weather. People have been using all the boat ramps and the river access points. So that's been good to see. This kind of winter, spring, early summer that we're looking forward to, we will be working on replacing the Junction City campground water system. And we're just trying to put together how to go about doing that, kind of sequencing of things and that sort of stuff. So it is a possibility that we won't open the Junction City campground until later in the summer next year. That's looking increasingly likely, but that's not the final word on that, I guess. Because we will, we still need to figure out some of the contracting and sequencing of different steps. And then the same for the Steiner Flat campground, just looking at this kind of winter, spring, early summer, and when we can fit in the work needed to do those campground upgrades that we've been talking about for a while. I think that's it. Otherwise, we have the same, like staffing wise, we have just about the same crew as we've had for a while, knock on wood. So if you do need anything, feel free to reach out to me, or David Byers is often the one working in Trinity County. He's our outdoor rec planner. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that here in the next few months, we should be receiving the report actually that the Watershed Center put together about the West Weaver Creek trail possibilities, kind of associated with a river restoration project in the West Weaver Creek area. I haven't seen that report, so I don't necessarily even know what it says, but we should be getting that soon. And I thought if the committee is interested in reviewing that and then helping us figure out kind of how to move forward with it, that would be helpful to me. So just throwing that out there as like a potential kind of action item that the committee could take on.
Very good. Jack, you got your hand up?
I was the one who put together that feasibility study, so I can comment on what that contains. Basically, there were a couple of different phases of introducing a trail into that area. The easiest approach would be incorporating some of the social trails as well as the access road that goes through there. It would create a 1 mile one way that you could access either by a low water crossing from the Mill Street trailhead or by way of Industrial Parkway over by the Weaverville wetlands. That's like the easiest possible way. It would require less than a quarter mile of weeds treatment and new construction, basically just opening up those social trails all the way up to the conversion of some of these areas to ADA compliant trails, trying to incorporate a bridge into that, basically trying to connect the industrial park over to Lee Fong Park by way of an alternative transportation route. I did like the rough draft of that, and the Yurok tribe is working on that final draft. I have a meeting with Leslie Hubbard scheduled to chat details and specifics on kind of what they are going to land on and come up with. After the community forest steering the public meeting the other day, it sounds like the BLM is not interested in this time at with regards to the bridge over Weaver Creek. It would be significant, so I can't really blame them. But we are hoping that they'll incorporate those the existing roads and some of the existing social trails to potentially create about a 2-mile loop. It would require about a third of a mile of trail construction and a significant amount of invasive weed treatments.
Thank you, Jack.
I look forward to seeing the report, and yeah, I can share that with this group if it's something that this group wants to weigh in on, kind of which direction or help advocate for different options that Jack has laid out. That's really, I guess, what could be the role of this group. But yeah, look forward to seeing it.
Interest in having that shipped out to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so Laura, if you'd send that maybe to Kelly and we can get that out to everybody.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the time frame is for that final draft. I know they're at the 90% design stage on that project, so I'm assuming it's very close.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I anticipate the next few months. So
All righty, is that all you have for us, Laura?
yep, that's it.
Okay, any questions for Laura?
Nope.
Not seeing any, thank you. Okay, up next, we've got our Forest Service reports, so I don't see any Six Rivers representation this morning. So we will move on to Shasta Trinity, I assume. Monique, is that
Yeah, I'll give an update, but I'm just gonna log into here because I'm gonna share a presentation. I could let Sarah go before.
okay? Sarah, you wanna leapfrog here and?
Sure,
you are
sounds
in our-
good.
All right,
Thanks, Monique. I don't have a lot to share today. I have been very decisively engaged with the shoe fire, which has been on the Shasta side of my unit for the last month. And this week is actually the first few days that I've been back to doing my regular day job without the shoe fire consuming much of the day. I wanted to express gratitude to the Watershed Center and the Trails Committee for continuing to work to provide us input on the trail, and I look forward to that discussion later in our agenda. I want to reiterate that we're still pretty early times in our North Trinity County Risk Reduction Project. This is a pre-scoping phase. The scoping letter is at the supervisor's office and should be signed here very soon. And so that the tribal consultation process and letters for that project have already gone out, since that process starts before everything else, essentially. So that phase is out, and then the scoping period will begin quite soon. I know we are having some conversations about making sure the timing of that doesn't overlap with things like Thanksgiving and Christmas, since we're in that part of the year. And we want to have people have the best opportunity to comment without taking them away from their families. So that's a big priority for us. But I think those are the big rocks, and everything else I have is covered under the topical area updates later on.
Sorry, that's on me.
Oh, unless there's any other questions or thoughts for me.
any questions for Sarah?
I just have this is Pat. Sarah, do you guys have yet from the concessionaire kind of end of year user kind of data for campgrounds, boat ramps, that sort of thing?
I'm sure we do, and I just didn't ask for it before this meeting, so I'll send something out right now and get those numbers out to you.
Great, thank you. Because we're hearing really conflicting things from people in the North Lake. It was a really, really busy summer to nobody came to my winery.
Oh,
Yeah. No, I took a note, and I'm gonna get that.
Thank you,
followed
Sarah.
on. Yeah.
anything else for Sarah? Not seeing anything, Sarah. Thank you very much. Okay, Monique, are you ready to go? Now, do I need to do something to support your presentation on my end?
I was going to give you a USB, but I figured to allow for my slide change, I'd just hop on and share my screen if that's okay.
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
Kelly did tell me about the big green button, but if you could
No, I'm like,
be having a
I
mess.
don't know if I could, there it is.
I'd be happy about that.
Sharing is not turned on. Okay. I could change that, or I can just give you my USB. I think that might just be.
Well, should I try the big green button?
I think that
Do
you'd have
something
to allow
authorize
me.
Her to.
That's what I was thinking. That's what Kelly shared with me. So let me
Wait,
follow,
oh yeah, click that
follow
one.
instructions here.
Multiple participants.
Yep, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ah.
Fancy. Okay, share my main screen.
Who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks, huh?
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share, oh yeah, that's what I see. I'm gonna share a presentation on our volunteers within the Forest Service. So I'm gonna share our volunteer data to wrap up the fiscal year 2024. So the fiscal year for the Forest Service runs from October 1st of 2023 all the way to September 30th of 2024. And we have a lot of volunteers. And we're also trying to be a lot better about tracking our volunteer contributions on the forest and training up a lot of our new employees to work with volunteers and also be able to keep track of that data as well. So I'll go ahead. So this picture right here is actually from an Ascend trip. I think it might have been shown at the last meeting as well, possibly when Amanda was giving her brief, but she's not in the call today right now. But this was from their youth trip. And I'll share some photos from other volunteer events, but don't have all of our volunteer photos, but maybe at a next meeting, I can share some more. Okay, so whenever I talk about volunteers in the Forest Service, I always start with talking about this National Volunteer Act that came out in 1972. It may be familiar to some people, but I know for others it may not be. So just to reiterate why volunteerism is important to us on the Forest Service and why we are allowed to have volunteers. It came out of this act. And so the act itself recognizes that the public has been interested in volunteering and giving time on public lands. And so through advocacy, this act came into play. And it allowed federal agencies to have volunteers. So this also ties into BLM as well and other federal entities that that maintain public lands to have volunteers on those lands.
Monique, can you minimize the?
Oh, yeah, good idea. Okay, and then let's see if they're, oh, here.
Can I do it?
It's small on mine. Yeah, I think you might have to as well. Yeah,
Okay.
perfect. Or I don't know if that was me or you, but it worked out. So this act also allows volunteers to get reimbursed. That is definitely funding dependent and has to be pre-approved. But we are able through our volunteer program to offer per diem to volunteers to reimburse them for driving from their duty location out to the field. And we do so in some cases, like for the backcountry horsemen. We do offer reimbursement for food for their animals and livestock, and also for reimbursement for their travel because towing a trailer is not cheap. And they actually have funding through the Trinity County Resource Advisory Committee to do that. So all these things kind of come into play to allow us to do things like this. It does state that volunteers are not employees, which is important for a couple different reasons. One being that they're not paid. And so what happens for a volunteer is when they contribute an hour of their time on public lands, that actually has a value. Right now, the current rate in California for a volunteer hour is around $37.50. Which is high and great because all that amount could actually go into what a volunteer organization or an entity that manages volunteers could contribute towards a match when they have partnership agreements or if they receive grant funding from other entities. So in tracking these hours and having our volunteer organizations track these hours as well, they could use these reports to then show in a grant application that they have a lot of match through volunteerism, and it can help them leverage more funds. It also allows us to cover liability for our volunteers. When volunteers are out in the forest, sometimes accidents happen, they have happened. Although volunteers are not federal employees, they do get covered just the same as a federal employee would be if they were out working and got injured during work. And so when we have volunteers sign up on volunteer forms, I often get, oh, okay, I'm just signing away my life here, which isn't the case. We're actually ensuring that we're covering them if they do get injured. And so that this act allows us to do that.
Is that through workman's comp or is that?
Yes, from workman's comp. So it would be the same process as if I got injured. Yeah. But with that, we also have to have the volunteers sign on to a volunteer agreement and also sign a job hazard analysis or review a risk assessment for their activity that they're doing.
Do you still have to have Forest Service employees there?
It depends on the activity. If it's a new volunteer group, we usually like to have Forest Service employees, but to be honest, I think we're kind of we are in a time where we may not have the same capacity to have a Forest Service employee out with the volunteer. And a lot of our volunteer groups do actually operate on their own. For example, we have the Bigfoot Trail Alliance that they're pretty skilled and they provide their own trainings to their volunteers. And so they can operate on their own. And we would do the same for other volunteer entities. Over time, when we have that relationship built, and if we are noticing stuff like if a trail is being maintained by a volunteer organization, and for example, we have seen this, if the trail shrub is not cut back, or if it's cut in a way that if somebody would fall, that it could impale them, then that's when we would want to send out a Forest Service employee with them until they're able to receive training and also train their own volunteers in proper maintenance. So we wouldn't always do that, but we might if there's a need to. And so this photo below, this was a pretty neat volunteer group that came out of the Bay Area. Somebody named Tom reached out to me because his family was coming out to Hayward Flat every single year. Family and friends would come out and volunteer, or not volunteer, they would come out and recreate at this campground. And so over time, they were noticing that it wasn't being maintained as well as it used to be. And so he had reached out and said, hey, is there any way that we can help maintain this campground? Could we volunteer there? And through a lot of different discussions, we allowed them to come out for the opening of the campground, and they stayed there for free. They helped maintain the campground. They painted signs. They cleared the roads. They even tried to get the through talking with the Shasta Recreation Company, they tried to get the bathrooms up and running to ensure that they wouldn't have to have porta potties there. So they did a lot when they came out, and it was cool because they were able to get a lot of other interested parties involved. And it's not really often that we have groups, well, actually, we do have a few groups from the Bay, but it's not super often where we have groups that are able and willing to do something like this. And so it started a new relationship, and hopefully they'll be out and available to help again this upcoming year, if conditions, of course, allow. So this is another picture from the Hayward Flat volunteers, painting new signage. They also helped paint the bathrooms and everything. So also our mission is to inspire and engage volunteers to continue to conserve our nation's natural and cultural resources, to ensure the sustainability of our public land legacy. So I just like to start with that background before going into the data, because I think it's not widely known why we value volunteers so highly on public lands. Okay, so with that, here are our reports for all the data that was collected. I also share data from previous years, so you can kind of see a comparison of how it looks now compared to, I think I went all the way back to 2014. So here are our number of volunteers per fiscal year. Here's how that data looks. So 2022 was our highest year for volunteer engagement. We had a lot of volunteers that year. And then 2024 is our second highest. So we were able to have just above 350 volunteers signed up. And that's of the ones that we were able to collect data on and track. And I think with more internal training on working with partners and volunteers, we'll be able to increase that number even more. And also just more advocacy for the volunteer program. Because again, a lot of people don't know that if they are volunteers with the Forest Service, that they do get their liability coverage. But I will add that some organizations that are volunteer entities do cover their own volunteers through their own insurance per their own requirements. And so that's the comparison. So it's interesting in this next slide is that it wasn't necessarily our highest year of volunteerism. Our highest year of volunteerism actually goes back to 2015. But notice in 2015, there's not as many volunteers. If I go back to this slide. So in 2015, what changed during that time was we actually had more campground hosts that were at a campground and helping maintain those campgrounds throughout the year. And so they contributed a lot of volunteerism on the forest. And that was an increase of about 5,000 hours compared to this year in that 2015 period. And campground hosts are pretty important, but they're also, it's hard to find the right one for our campgrounds. I don't think we've had one. Gosh, I'm forgetting the campground. It's beyond Junction City along Highway 299. And gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on this one. But there's a campground where we usually do have a camp host over there, but we haven't been able to have one in that area for a long period of time. And I'm apologizing for forgetting the name. But that's just an example of how that's changed over the years. But nonetheless, we did have a lot of volunteer engagement this past year. We had just under 12,000 hours of volunteerism and a lot of unique and new projects this year. One standout project that was a really big collaboration between our forest archaeologists, Ben Sundahl, the district ranger. It's a little bit past Pigeon Point. Not Pigeon Point, Laura, I saw your comment. But one of the neat volunteer projects that we had this year was at Natural Bridge, where we had volunteers from the Northwest Climbers Association come out, and they were able to remove carabiners that were placed on a rock at Natural Bridge that is of high heritage importance on native ancestral lands for the tribes that have utilized those lands as a heritage site. And so people either knowingly or unknowingly have been using that natural bridge as a place where they go and climb. And the Northwest Climbers Association was able to go out, volunteer, and remove all of those carabiners in a highly technical route. And that was a really awesome project, and not really an area that we get a lot of volunteer engagement, that area being archaeology and heritage resources. So it was cool to see other resource areas in the Forest Service engaging those volunteers.
So Monique, I got a question about
Yeah,
hours and people. Does that include groups like this?
so our Trinity Collaborative, I did not, I did include the RAC,
Okay.
yes. But the Trinity Collaborative was not included. There's definitely room for improvement in my volunteer reporting. But the main reason for that being is that some people are volunteers with the Trinity Collaborative and others are getting paid and are working when they go to the meetings. And so if we're able to track that for future meetings, then we could definitely include that.
How about Ascend when they take groups in, kids and stuff?
We count all their hours as long as they're not paid.
What is the minimum age for volunteer?
It varies per what the volunteer is doing. And so we just have to abide by California's working laws and make sure that when we do have a young volunteer out there, one, they do have a different sign up process. Their parents have to consent. And two, we just have to make sure that we're minimizing the work that they're doing and ensuring that the work that they're doing is safe for their capabilities.
So I just have a comment. So like Bowerman Barn, I volunteer there all the time. I do school group tours and all that kind of stuff. But the paperwork for volunteer hours was so onerous. We quit recording all our volunteer hours that we do up there doing tours and maintenance and all that stuff. So anyway, I'm just saying that comment because you said that you don't get volunteers for heritage stuff, archaeology stuff, and we do that all the time up there.
Yeah, and I would, I'm definitely kind of pitching this as well as an opportunity if y'all know volunteers or if you need help with the process. I'm definitely somebody that can help with that. We also have more people who are volunteer coordinators on the forest as well, who can help out and now know the process a little bit better too. Whereas in the past, I don't know if people had a good understanding.
I think there was,
Understanding, when we had issues with. Yeah, okay, so I go down every week and restock the brochures, okay, well, but I was supposed to do tailgate, first aid lectures every time I did something, some of that stuff was just ridiculous. I had to, the whole risk reduction stuff, and then people got mad when they had to record their age. So we have a lot of older people.
Yeah.
They didn't want to tell you how old they were. It was little stuff like that. It was
I
like,
think when we originally, there was also an issue of it, there had to be an entity.
yeah, there had to be
It couldn't
an,
be just individuals.
It can be individuals.
Anyway, so that we had to find a nonprofit.
and I had to
Oh.
sign my
We
life
had to,
away.
we had to be.
Right.
If that's improved, if that's changed,
I
That'd be great.
would be more than happy to set up a call to talk about it more because you don't have to have an entity. What we just have people do is we'll just have them make a group name.
Well, we did, but again, that, all the responsibility was on me then for like coming up with this. The risk group, you know, the whole list of tasks and what the risks were. I had this big binder I had to do and
Oh,
I had to, then I had to do that every time we had a volunteer event. So we just started going down there and doing stuff. And Pete knows, I send pictures to Pete of like the school group tours and all that kind of
On
stuff.
on holiday weekends, we give
Yeah,
tours.
we do the docent tours and everything. Yeah,
yeah. And I would definitely love to
Should be
count
capturing that.
those hours. I just you don't have to sign up the people who who go on the tours and it
We don't
isn't a
consider
way,
them volunteers, but we
right?
track how many of
we
people,
had 40 people
40 or
Memorial
50
Day.
people on a day.
A minimum when a volunteer does sign up, though, if they're a part of a group and they're over the age of 18, we do need them to write their name. I believe it asks for the email, but not everyone always puts their email, so that's not exactly a requirement, but it is good to have if we have any questions. Their signature, and then whether they're capable of doing the work and whether they allow for photo release. And then it does ask for their date of birth, but mainly because we need to know who is over the age of 18 and who is not. We also do keep track of volunteer demographics, but we could do better at that as well. But that's the minimum to allow us to cover any volunteer injuries or the volunteer liability, because without those identifying information, then it's hard to do that if somebody gets hurt.
Is there like a minimum threshold for just reporting hours? Let's say that someone's not interested in the liability, they just want to capture the hours. I mean, is that?
Then we don't capture their hours, then we can't acknowledge that they're out doing the work out there because it is a pretty big liability. If people are doing work on Forest Service lands and they get injured and they were supposed to be volunteers that we knew about. We have actually had that instance happen when I first started as a volunteer coordinator. And it's not a fun process. Yeah, it really does suck and it's never an issue until it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's some background there, but we can chat more about it. You shouldn't have a binder. I will tell you that. It shouldn't need to be like a big.
I mean, it was like how to use a. I mean. Had to write up.
I'll work with you on that because I think from the sounds of it, somebody was being a little bit more strict than they needed to.
It was a while ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, we just gave up.
yeah. No, I'll work with you on that if you would like. So continuing, here are where we have the most engagements. Sorry, it's a lot of information and a little bit far away on the screen. So we collect, I just did a closer comparison of hours from 2021 to 2024. Where we have the most amount of engagement. And so from this, we do have the most engagement on our wilderness and non-wilderness trails and also among campground hosts. And that's where we tend to get the most volunteer hours. I think that almost adds up to like 10,000 right there from 2024. And then in Weaverville or in Trinity County, we probably had around half of those volunteer hours that we counted on our whole forest. So whole forest having a little bit under 12,000 hours this fiscal year. Trinity County had around 5,000 or 6,000 hours from that volunteer engagement. And then non-recreation departments also have a good amount of volunteer engagement, but definitely not as much. And definitely something that we're hoping to increase through more trainings and hopefully building up more staff knowledge on proper volunteer processes and how to engage volunteers. Oh, I did not mean to put this slide in there. I apologize. But then with that,
Cool.
oh no. Well, I had all the volunteers listed on here, but I don't see it. I don't know where they went.
So for the Trinity County hours for this year, how much of that was Ascend?
Ascend had over 1,000 hours of volunteer time. I do have their breakdown. They had a big portion. Yeah. I was like, where do I have the whole list? Oh, here it is. Sorry, I guess I shared a different slide. But here were all of the volunteers that we were able to count this year in our reporting. So this list and
So the,
next one.
so the fire or the, tower lookouts that we, used to man with volunteers, I guess that's just kind of done, right? Has that been done for a while or
They
they
get
just,
paid.
huh?
The
They get
lookouts are
paid?
paid.
Oh, wow. They've never been volunteers? I always thought there was some kind of
No, they're
always been paid positions.
They might have been volunteers at a time, but I'm not sure because in addition, that 2015 year had a lot going to fire prevention and education. And so I'm not sure where those hours came from. I need to look into that.
I know.
Might have been a long time ago, but
It's been, the last, I don't know, 10 years or so.
10 years or so.
But are they still manned? I mean, are they,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, at least Bonanza King, Weaver Valley are.
And so they're manned by
And they're
Forest Service employees then, huh?
seasonal,
seasonal employees.
Okay.
not 24/7.
No, they don't.
It's just during this fire season, right?
But they commute. The guy at Bonanza King, he drives up there
Every day.
every day for his shift.
Wow.
Unless it's like a lightning thing and then he's got.
Is that like a traditional 40-hour week or what do they? And they just have a number of people that'll do it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I guess I just. hadn't really-
We've actually
Oh,
tried to volunteer at the Bonanza King, but
Okay.
That's
But
cool.
you had to have an organization.
I don't, that's the actual policy. I've read the handbook manual.
I kind of thought it'd be cool to hang out up there for a while.
sure.
I write poetry,
Get out of
like.
doing dishes at home and laundry and
Yeah.
Well, if you want to volunteer up there, maybe we'll need it. Yeah.
Money, yeah.
hey,
Yeah, of
you ought
course.
to put something together to put in the Trinity Journal.
Yeah.
I was thinking that. I was like, I think I should.
Effort,
Yeah.
the promotional side of that, is that,
Yeah.
even the high schools too, I think it's probably not a bad, place to promote this
Yeah.
or like with the ag teachers, just to make sure they're aware of the process, because that's a great way for young people to get their foot in the door, right? And kind of,
I think so. And I think our staff are definitely getting a little bit more interested in engaging with the
so
volunteers.
that is a question I have, because I know, having, with NRCS, we have the Earth Team program, or we had the Earth Team program. There was always some kind of internal issue, right? Because managing volunteers was never, it kind of went from office to office, right? There were some offices that were kind of really into it, but yeah, there were other offices that just refused because they either had some bad experiences or they just don't have the time, right? Yeah. So, do you find that true kind of?
Yeah. I see a lot of the volunteer engagement in the recreation programs because a lot of other staff areas may not have the same capacity or time. But we're working on it. Yeah,
Any questions for Monique?
No,
That was really good.
thank
No,
you.
that was good, yeah.
And then at the next meeting, we're hoping to have all of the wilderness counts together to share during that time. I should have it ready in 2 weeks, so hopefully we'll have another report to share.
January.
Or Mike will, yeah.
Cool.
Uh-huh.
It'd be interesting to see how many people were hiking up there for sure. Uh-huh.
Right? It is interesting. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who don't register.
Correct. Well, and I'm curious too, to see if all these fires that we've had influence that.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
Because
a good question.
couple of trips that I've made.
Yeah.
You know, like going up to Doe, you know, out of Stoddard there. Boy, when you hit that junction between Doe and Stoddard and go to Doe, I mean, it's newt. I mean, it's moonscape from that junction all the way to Doe. I mean, there is not a tree to be found. So I'm curious, you know, the word of mouth and everything, if that gets out, you know, is that going to be a, you know, a detraction from people's interest in getting in the backcountry now, given that some more areas, I mean, it's just gonna be years before you start seeing any.
Go into Long Canyon and all that, so.
Yeah.
That's what we've seen.
Yep.
I think Stewart's.
So you think it is?
Stewart's Fork, yeah.
You think it is having an
Deep
influence?
Fire, you know, you get up Stewart's Fork away and you get the deep fire on the
Yep.
other side of the trail.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. Yeah, maybe we'll see some next time.
Sure, yeah.
There's a-
Okay, I do see something in the chat here.
Was there something, what's in the chat?
Yeah, what is it? How do I get to that?
Oh,
I
yeah,
can unmute and chime in. It was from me.
Okay,
I was just gonna kind of to the point that, like, at least in the BLM, like we do struggle with, there are so many good volunteer ideas and sometimes someone will come to us with an idea, but it does still take staff time to organize, implement, make sure it's like done safely. So that, you know, I think someone in the room there pointed out that that can sometimes be a limitation to volunteer time. One way that we have gotten around that is in the Reading area is to have like an organization like the Trail Alliance, organize individual volunteers kind of for us, and then they all kind of work under the Trail Alliance. So we only have to like coordinate with the Trail Alliance, and then they kind of will guide the individual volunteers.
kind of a sponsor
So
idea.
for folks, yeah, we have an Adopt a Trail program that we've started. I wouldn't say it's taken off like gangbusters or whatever the phrase is, but it's going, and you know, different groups can then adopt a trail and they can get instruction from the Trail Alliance and check in with them on kind of a more routine basis, and then we just kind of check in with the Trail Alliance. So yeah, it does work really well, and is something that in the Weaver Basin system might be a model to kind of increase volunteerism, but also like decrease the burden on the Forest Service rec staff to be the like point of contact for every single volunteer, you know?
Good idea, yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Monique, anything else?
No, not today.
Very good. Well, thank you. Very, very good report. Okay, I think that concludes all of our Forest Service reports. So we're gonna move on to NRA. Is Sarah?
I think Sarah did her.
She did hers. She went before Monique.
Right, but I just wanted to check in. Anything on Minersville boat ramp updates, Sarah?
Yeah, so the one thing I have kept tabs on other than the shoe fire is Minersville. And so I should have a more substantive update on this than anything else. I've been attending bi-weekly meetings with our engineering contractor. And the thing that we are really trying to hone in on and work to get correct is the parking piece of this puzzle. You know, we put out something that we thought would be palatable to the water board vis-a-vis 10 years ago. And you know, clearly that doesn't hit the mark for where the public is at and the usage. And I can, you know, what's been helpful is I can pull up Google Maps and just look right at, you know, this is how folks park at Minersville. How do we get this to happen? Where we have challenges is the engineering, is the engineering of that, and having that be something that's engineered to a standard is tricky for them. And so we're just trying to work through how to formalize what has been an informal parking situation without it being so formal as to go over the line with what the water board can buy off on. And so we're not even to the water board stage yet. We're still very much in the engineering stage. And just trying to get the parking to be something that people can use and want to use. And so that has been my primary focus.
So Sarah, is the challenge the steepness?
It's the steepness of the slopes. That's exactly it, Pat. You hit the nail on the head.
So last time you were gonna go to DBOW, trying to go from 60% design to 90% design. So are we not at that stage now?
We did have a conversation with them, but kind of just circled back to, we don't want to go to 90% unless we can get the parking right. Like we can get to 90% on a parking design that nobody wants, but I don't think that that's a true 90%, as it were. You know, that we still have the work to do on the parking.
Right,
So
right.
I think we're at just, let's call a spade, try and get the 60% right, and then move to 90% after that. So
Okay.
So you're not really even to the point of having a conversation about compensating
Treatment.
stormwater treatment or anything like that?
it's with our engineers. Yeah. So I had thought we were on a path, right? I thought we were pretty clear. But then what came back after the submittal to the contractors was not the thing that was in my brain, right? And I don't speak engineer. So I do my best, but I don't speak engineer. And so that's when we set up these kind of bi-weekly check-ins with me there and the engineer there, and we go in and we talk about the design, and is that the intent that's being translated on the page. And so I think we're getting closer to there now that we're doing these check-ins. I thought by, you know, the public feedback going to them, they'd get that and then incorporate, but that's not where we went. And so now we're going there more decisively.
Okay,
So Sarah, is one option to talk to, you know, the valley kind of, you know, like, so Shasta Lake, New Maloney's, all those areas where they have put parking lots below the water line. Can you use the kind of standards or engineering design that they've done on these other reservoirs?
And that's where DBOW has been tremendously helpful. And I give them full credit for that, because they fund a lot of these other boating access areas, right? And so they have sent us files and connected us with ideas from those other sites, and New Maloney's was one of them, Carol. So yeah, absolute credit to DBOW on that front in terms of the coordination and the statewide perspective.
Okay, it just seemed like if the engineers were looking for design standards, you could use the ones that have already been implemented. I realize that Water Quality Control Board's different in how they look at stuff, but the actual design has some precedent.
It absolutely does. Yes.
Okay.
thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Anything else for Sarah on that one?
Jim, one question for Sarah from the past meeting. Sarah was on the early ramp removals at several of the boat ramping areas with shafts erected. we get an answer to why they removed them so early?
The courtesy docks.
Courtesy docks.
Let me look. We might have had that and I may have failed to follow up. Let's see. This is da. Yes, I have that right here. In my, yeah. Due to a management error, they accidentally pulled Clark Springs courtesy dock about 5 feet early. The Bowerman dock was pulled Thursday, September 6th, and according to water levels, if not a foot or two early. So that was the 2 that they had called out as being not quite right.
Which people weren't too happy about, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it seems like Joe had that conversation with Cheyenne about not pulling those early, so.
And Sarah, we had the same problem in the spring with Shasta Rec. Not getting the courtesy docks in, not getting the gates open, whatever the maintenance issue may be, which is just unacceptable. I mean, they're the concessionaire. It's very clear when those entities should be open. And I mean, the satisfaction level with Shasta Recreational is just, I mean, it's pathetic.
I hear you. Yeah, we'll absolutely continue to focus on that accountability piece. I know that they have had some issues on the Shasta side as well that we have been looking at on this kind of same regard. And there's not an excuse for it, so I'm not going to try and provide one.
One of the, I forget, and Pat and the group here might be able to help me, but one of the previous NRA rangers she has since moved on, and she came off the Tahoe, and the Tahoe had, I believe it was the Tahoe, had such a problem with the concessionaires that the Forest Service took back the responsibility to manage the forest, or a portion of that recreational area up there. I mean, we're to the point now with our community that we've got to have a better partnership out there. I mean, if you go to Minersville, and it's atrocious, the condition of the facilities. And it's just a continual problem, whether it's there or at Clark Springs, and all the drainage structures are plugged. And I mean, it's just, I could get a laundry list of stuff just walking through open sewer lines at the campground prior to Minersville up there.
Bushy-tail.
Bushydale, just stuff is, you know, inexcusable.
Well, I'll say one complaint I heard was people pay for the annual fee. And so, you know, essentially they're feeling shortchanged. They're paying, you know, the money, and the courtesy dogs aren't in when they're supposed to, and then they're pulled early. So you're getting a little bit of a, you know, taxpayer kind of fee payer rebellion up there.
Can I, Pete, if you would be willing to give me your phone number, you have a lot of specific examples, and I would really like to get those specific examples and have Joe Stubendick give you a call so he can write these down and get them documented. Because if we talk about it, it's one thing, and if we write it down, I think that carries it further. So would that be okay?
Sure, I'm more than amenable. I'd have to go back through and look at some of my pictures, but I've documented it with photographs, but it's been a long time, and I'm not sure if I can describe some of them, but I don't know if I have that photo documentation. But
So
yes, I would be more than happy to provide any assistance I can to the agency.
Okay, and what's, or you can email it to me or you can say your number either way.
Yeah, the home phone's the best because our cell coverage is pretty poor. It's 623-2816.
Okay, 530, I would assume.
Correct.
Okay. 530-623-2816. Got it.
Yes.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the specific examples. That's super helpful.
All right, anything else before we move on to Trinity Camps update? Okay, Sarah, how about Trinity Camps? Any update on that one?
So I don't have as much here. I have not tracked it as closely in the last month as Minorville, just given the fire. I did hear a voicemail that we received from a community member out of Ridgeville, and she seemed very happy. And that was a very nice voicemail for me to hear. But other than that, I don't have a lot, and I'm sorry.
Okay, not a problem.
Have you
Sarah,
guys seen anything that you'd like to share?
well, when you get a chance, can you email me, when they're gonna start, removing the trees at the airport and the KOA?
Okay,
So,
Yeah.
My understanding is that Darrow Logging got the logging contract. And so, it's just, the community is like trying to figure out what's going on. And I want to be able to like quell rumors and, explain what's going on and all that stuff. And it just helps if I know when they're gonna start work.
that I can do.
Thank you.
Very good. Anything else on Trinity Camps? Okay, Sarah, thank you very much for your updates. Bowerman Barn, anybody wants to report on Bowerman Barn?
Well, so Pete, last time we met, they were gonna go out to bid to hire the engineer. So do you know if they've done that for the foundation?
So I heard at the beginning of this fiscal year that our contracting division did not make it to the deadlines for putting it out. So they said we would have to resubmit it this year to be able to go forward. But I don't have the like to the minute update on that, Carol. That was the one from, they had a whole list of, at the end of the fiscal year, things that got through contracting, things that are being deferred, and things that you need to resubmit. And I know it was on that, you need to resubmit this next year list. But that's the last that I have.
So do you have any plans to resubmit the request to hire the contractor?
Absolutely. Yeah. They told us to resubmit, we're gonna resubmit. It's just, I know Pete has also been a resource advisor on the shoe fire and working on the efforts there. So I don't know if he has done that or not. But it is on his list for the year. And sooner rather
Okay.
than later, once we are done and wrap up this fire.
Okay, just, I keep thinking about deadlines for the McConnell Foundation grants, because we missed September. So the next one that comes up is March, so to get the rest of the money to actually implement the project, once you get the costs, I just trying to figure out timeframes here. Want to make sure it get you some money.
I appreciate it. That would be awesome.
Okay, anything else on Bowerman?
No, other than I'm volunteering to meet with the Historical Society. This afternoon, they're doing I don't know if you Google Bowerman Barn, the Historical Society taped an interview of me doing a tour. And now they're doing this 360 thing where essentially the camera's doing all this while I'm talking. And then I have a presentation at the Historical Society on December 14th. So more volunteer hours.
Yay. Is that in the Trinity Journal this month? Was that in the Trinity Journal?
No,
No, okay. I saw something at the Historical Society. Okay, cool.
This week,
Great.
this month, Saturday is the railroad. Next.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what I
December
said.
is the barn.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
And the horses are, I mean, sorry, the mules are there. So the kids have been going down feeding them.
Okay, we are moving on to partner updates. So up front, we do have the North Lake Trails Subcommittee, and I know we've got a presentation that.
Yeah, so-
Jack's on the hook for, but did.
Jack's on the hook. So just the quick overview is, I agreed to bring people together from the North Lake and the.
Yep.
We did that in October. We had one meeting and came up with a strategy that we want to, that Jack will share. And bottom line, want to move forward a letter of to the full collaborative for next week that would go to the Board of Supervisors to.
Who would draft the letter?
Not me.
Okay.
I did the last one.
Right, so.
So we'll see. Maybe Jack will volunteer to draft the letter. It should be fairly short, but I'd say take it away,
Hey,
Jack.
Jack, you're up.
Yeah, I can draft a letter and have some folks look over it. I've never drafted a letter like that before, so I will probably need some assistance on that, as far as wording goes and that type of thing.
And
but
is the timing?
I can at least get it started for us.
I think timing is really critical because the Forest Service team that's doing the NEPA on this North Lake.
Right.
Yeah.
Fuel.
Yeah, the deadline for our trail portion of it from the NRA is a week from today. As far as those.
But as far as
shape
getting
files
into the
go.
full committee, is that something you want to go out via email? So Kelly would need it probably.
I think, yeah, the letter will need to be prepared in time for the full collaborative meeting next Friday.
Right, but you'd wanted that to go out in advance of the meeting, correct?
Yeah,
Maybe, or just,
not
available during the meeting or?
just available during the meeting.
Okay, well, just keep us informed in terms of when that letter is available and ready, and then.
Yeah.
Kelly, I'm sure will do what he needs to do to.
More critical is not having it delayed in getting to the Board of Supervisors.
Right, okay.
It needs to go to the first board meeting in December, I would think.
So I was gonna draft a letter this weekend because we are gonna, it's on the agenda for the Trinity Center Community Services District kind of.
Right.
And so our board meeting is on Tuesday, so we're gonna have a draft letter on Tuesday for the board to consider, so maybe Jack and I can look at that draft letter and see if there's anything usable as far as to go to the collaborative.
And I can share the last letter that we did, which was on the RAC appointments with Jack, and that'll have some of the usual language that kind of starts these letters off, because it's a letter from the Board of Supervisors to the Forest Service.
Right.
Copy.
Okay.
So we're drafting the letter that the Board of Supervisors is going to sign essentially.
Right. Exactly.
Yes,
Cool. Yeah, I would love to see those letters that have been submitted previously. That'll be great.
okay.
All right, Jack, do you want to give a kind of brief overview of what the proposal is, or?
Yes, let me share this with you. All right. Perfect. Can everyone see this
Yes.
presentation?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yes.
Sweet. All right, so the Ross Molyneux Trail, essentially. So first of all, I definitely want to thank Trinity Trail Alliance. They donated $5,000 to the Watershed Center to help out with this project. They basically funded all of our scouting efforts, the volunteer recruitment, the mapping, the coordination with the NRA. That was a significant contribution. So if you see anyone aside from me from TTA, make sure to thank them for everything that they did to make this happen. We had 8 different volunteers over the course of the last month and a half, scouting 28 miles of new proposed trail alignment. It was a significant effort, and yeah, we really couldn't have done it without them.
Did Monique capture those volunteer hours?
No,
Yes.
they're in the current fiscal year. I didn't add them this time, Jack,
that's-
but I saw them.
No. Okay. Well, I did include them in the
Okay.
volunteer hours, so
I saw them, yeah.
cool. Nice. All right. So get that out of there. So this is just kind of a general, all of the colored areas in here. All the brown is the Bowerman project, and then the yellows are a combination of the Trinity Camps and the Highway 3 fuel break projects. Sarah can, I'm sure, give far more details on the variety of projects associated with those, with the fuel reduction, than I can, but there's a variety of treatments across the entire landscape, from Rush Creek all the way up to Coffee Creek. It's an amazing effort, and it's super cool to see. So the existing trail is on this map, just right here down at the bottom, tiny brown line. But our dream is to expand it, kind of piggybacking and updating Ross's initial idea for the trail. So just to recap Ross's idea, it would be basically single track on the west side of the lake shore following the high water line, with the intention of connecting the existing recreation infrastructure, which includes 33 day use areas and campgrounds along the west side and east side of the lake, also including Lewiston Lake and the south side of Trinity Lake. So west side would be all basically single track. East side would be utilizing existing roads with a full circumnavigation route between 120 and 160 miles long, primarily targeting, bike packing type of thing, or, folks who just really like hiking. That could be a route that turns into an ultra marathon. There's a lot of variety that could go into that. The difference between that 120 and 160 miles is really dependent upon our ability to cross Trinity Dam, which I have heard that there has not been any success on that front in the previous meetings with the Bureau of Reclamation. So the 160-mile route would take the existing roadways down to Deadwood Road, and then from Deadwood going to the south side of Lewiston Lake and wrapping around back up to Trinity Dam. The current expansion proposal really focuses primarily on potential segments of trail within these current fuel break planning efforts, with the real question of what are people going to use? And for that reason, we're planning on leaving out the segment between Alpine View Campground and Trinity Center, going over Bowerman. It's just a massive piece of land. And how many people are going to use it? Probably not a ton. So we really want to focus on areas that are either just outside of the Trinity Center community, or connecting a couple of these campgrounds, or developing some of these areas around the high use campgrounds like Alpine View and Hayward Flat segments that do not have any existing trail at this time. Although Alpine View does have a small segment of paved trail, which is about 0.2 of a mile, that goes down towards the high water line. So the expansion proposal would try and utilize any existing ground disturbance that's already there. So water ditches, mining roads, logging roads, any and all of the above, with the dream of connecting the existing trail from Fawn to Clark Springs all the way up to Covington Mill and then from Bowerman Barn to Alpine View Campground. We also looked into the possibility of a loop above Hayward Flat Campground, which I'll go over in just a little bit here, as well as trying to incorporate some trails that are compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, potentially converting a section of existing trail from Clark Springs to Minersville boat ramp. Also, the potential of an ADA trail heading south along the lakeshore from the Trinity Center boat ramp. It would, and of course, there's certain architectural requirements with regards to the parking areas, with the bathrooms, and both Clark Springs and the Trinity Center boat ramp comply with those requirements. So as far as potential locations, they're already, the architectural requirements are there. We just need a trail that folks can walk or use their wheelchairs on. So altogether, all of these proposed trail segments would add 28 miles of trail around the west side of the lake, and including the existing about 3 3/4 mile section of trail from Fawn up to Clark Springs. We would now have a 32-mile trail system on the west side of Trinity Lake, including almost a mile. That number is actually 0.85. So it would include almost a mile of new ADA compliant trail. And what's really important to the Trinity River Management Unit is expanding recreation opportunities outside of the Alps, especially since COVID. They've been seeing a very significant increase in use in the Alps. But also, like, most of the trails in the Alps are not the most friendly as far as hikeability for families. These proposed expansions, especially the ones along the lakeshore or water ditch lines, they would be very mellow, very even grade, very friendly for beginner hikers or families, young children, elderly, all of the above. Trying to create something that's accessible for just about everybody. And of course, these would all be non-motorized trails that we're suggesting here.
Would that non-motorized though include bikes, mountain bikes, that sort of, is there much of a difference between kind of a hiking trail versus a mountain bike trail?
There are certain design differences that we incorporate, but really, yeah, we're thinking multi-use, non-motorized, but allowing for mechanized use. And bicycles are, human powered. They fall under mechanized, but not motorized. And so we incorporate Forest Service standards, International Mountain Biking Association standards into all of our trail design concepts, trying to keep that average grade no greater than 7%. Which allows for a climbing trail. Also, like you get some exercise going uphill at a constant 7% grade, but then we get variations through all of that by incorporating ditch lines. So you get a little climb and then a nice mellow walk. And so we do incorporate, we want it to be friendly and usable for mountain bikers as well as equestrians and hikers. So slowing folks down where it's needed, trying to anticipate potential high-speed moments, and making sure that there's no blind turns around those areas. These are all things that we think about with every trail that we work on. So this is a segment of Union Ditch just outside of Hayward Flat Campground. A lot of these water ditch lines are actually in really good shape, and some of them are very easy to access. This one's right outside of the campground, and it's pretty evident that folks have been walking on there. This segment is part of the Trinity Camps project. You can see all the painted trees in this area. And other segments of Union Ditch, this is north of Hayward Flat towards Strope Creek. Other segments, it really just needs, to have some vegetation cleared out of there, sticks removed. The ditch line is very intact. That we found from Hayward Flat all the way to Covington Mill. There are 4 segments that would need a bit of dirt moving, and the longest blowout on that ditch line is about 200 feet, and it's very achievable. So other segments, this is one of the smaller blowouts pictured on the left side there. Again, it's just one of those like vegetation removal, and there you go. There's a very usable trail. Other segments are this one, where you can actually see Galen Anderson is one of our volunteers. You can kind of see him. Some segments of this ditch line are incredibly thick. However, with the fuel reduction efforts that are suggested within the Highway 3 project, this segment of Union Ditch between Hayward Flat and Covington Mill is all within that project area. So after the fuel reduction efforts occur, this is going to be clear and ready for use just about. So, segments like that, it's just, you could almost clear it of vegetation and slap a trail sign up there, and it would be accessible for the intended user groups. Almost, aside from that about 400 or 500 feet of blowout that needs to be repaired. So the real question is, what's realistic and what makes sense? What is this group interested in? And what can be accomplished within this accelerated timeline for the fuel break planning efforts? What can we make sure that they keep in the project as far as consideration of this trail? So what I'm hoping we can talk about is determining the priority segments to kind of help with that planning effort capacity. And we'll return to this slide in just a little bit here. These slides are all talking about segments of the trail that we just talked about, as well as mileage of these segments. So the Union Ditch from Hayward Flat up to Covington Mill. Could everyone see my cursor?
We saw it briefly, but it's gone now.
It's at the top.
Okay, yep, we got it.
Perfect. So from Hayward Flat to Covington Mill is that 4.58 miles. This is almost entirely intact ditch line or logging road or mining road. There are just a couple of segments like this small blowout right here. This one, which is about that 2 to 250 foot blowout along the ditch line. Like those are the only couple of segments. Even these small ones here are pretty insignificant and crossable as soon as vegetation is removed. It would require an easement if we wanted to stay on SPI property. The ditch line is intact through here. So after talking with Todd, who's the fire planner, we had a field trip in this area with the fire planner, the rec planner, and the NEPA planner for the NRA to discuss all of these projects, talking about the sections that are going to be the most challenging to build, and if there's interest in pursuing some of these easements through private timber companies. This area was just logged by SPI, I believe, about 2 years ago. And after chatting with Mike McFadden about that potential, he wasn't even worried about them pushing back on it. We have a pretty good relationship with SPI in Weaverville, and I mentioned this idea to Keith Greenwood during the community forest public meeting last week, and he's like, send me the shape files and we'll talk about it. So they're open to the possibility. So this expansion from Hayward Flat to Covington Mill, it would be a slam dunk as far as the amount of soil we would have to move to make that happen. And it would add 4.5 miles and connect the community of Covington Mill to a trail that is right next to their neighborhood.
So does that go all the way to Alpine View or is that a different stretch?
This is a different stretch. This red line that's here from Bowerman Barn to the boat ramp to Alpine View is a different segment. We did look at the potential of utilizing, I forget the name of this ditch line, so you'll have to remind me. Utilizing this ditch line basically from the bridge over the East Fork of Stewart's Fork to try and connect over to Bowerman Barn.
That's the Cox,
yeah.
yeah, that's the Cox Kennedy ditch.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Carol. Yeah, so I mean, that is another option as far as expanding the trail, getting people off of the roadway. East Fork of Stewart's Fork gets pretty intense with spring melt. And so we did not consider the potential of a trail bridge over there, especially since this bridge over East Fork of Stewart's Fork is not very heavily trafficked. And, you know, as far as crossability, might as well use existing infrastructure. I have the numbers for Bowerman Barn to Alpine View in another slide, I believe.
Perfect.
The segment that we are incredibly excited about is actually this loop over the ridge from Hayward Flat. It would utilize the existing Union Ditch up towards Stroke Creek and the existing intact ditch line south of Hayward Flat. The ditch line ends about right here, and there's an existing logging road from Stroke Creek all the way up to the roadway that brings you down into Hayward Flat. The roadway is definitely a steeper grade than we like to build for trail purposes, at times exceeding 20%. So we did include a couple of climbing turns here, switchbacks, trying to incorporate from this bottom of the switchbacks here, all the way down to Stroke Creek is all previous logging road. This segment is Sierra Pacific, and it's about 300 feet of private land that would require an easement, but it's just on the tiniest little corner of their property. So
Is that
this
what you were calling the Dogwood Loop?
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
This ridge line, you know, if they don't go for the easement, this ridge line here above Stroke Creek is absolutely phenomenal, just filled with dogwood. It was amazing. We just happened to be up there when all the dogwood leaves started to turn pink. Because, yeah, springtime, I can only imagine it's just going to be absolutely phenomenal. The segment that would require probably the most construction is this segment going from the paved roadway towards Hayward down towards Estrelita. There is a segment of existing ditch line right about here that does wrap around through the Crane Mills property and all the way around here. But we're trying to utilize private timberland as little as possible through this project. As well as all of the yellow, aside from Hayward, this is all Trinity camps, as well as this segment around Ridgeville. Everything else included within this is all within the Highway 3 fuel break project. Except for, of course, the green, which is outside of any of the fuel break projects. This section is amazing. There's actually some old growth timber through here. There's an existing ditch line, and you get some really stellar views looking south out towards Trinity Lake. If all of this gets included, the total trail mileage that would be added to the system is just above 12 miles. And it would be, then you could actually create a destination out of Hayward Flat. It's already one of the most popular campgrounds. And we could actually keep on bringing people there and get people a little bit closer to Trinity Center in that way so that they can restock their firewood and purchase more supplies. Any questions on this particular segment we're looking at before I move on?
Jack, the 12.198 miles, that includes the SPI miles.
Correct, yes. I tried to incorporate existing ditch line and existing roadway into that.
Okay,
I think that 12.19 actually captures this segment here along the ridge, just to say like this is the greatest potential mileage.
yeah,
So this is a segment that we're proposing, and a segment of existing trail could potentially be converted to a trail compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's not the most friendly contour at this moment, so it would require some realignments in order to comply, some widening of the trail, and of course, hard surface being incorporated. Minimum of 36-inch wide trail tread in order to comply with Forest Service standards of ADA trail, and a hard, durable surface that is accessible year-round. So I don't have any current estimates on what it would take to build something like that. But if we're interested in doing so, of course, we need to talk to the Forest Service about their interest in this project as well. But if they're interested and we go that route, I can put together an estimate. But this segment from Clark Springs to Hayward Flat it has some strong potential for expanding from the existing lake trail and connecting an additional campground through there. Actually, a couple of campgrounds and the private boat ramp at Estrelita. This segment from Clark Springs up to Mule Creek, the fire team up at the Mule Creek Fire Station actually utilized that segment as fire line training. And so some of this roadway is perfectly beautiful, and some of the existing ditch line is amazing and intact. Ross and I walked that together like right at the start of when we started scouting all this project, and it's perfectly usable. There would be a small little realignment needed right in this area by Mule Creek. This is a mile of trail that could be incorporated very easily. Of course, the exit of Mule Creek and the bridge that's right there would absolutely pose a hazard as far as safety goes. So maybe temporarily incorporating down to this lake shore could be a viable option. Any questions on this one? Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry, Carol, go ahead.
Every time I cross that bridge, which is pretty routinely, I think about bridges where they essentially have a trail cantilevered off to the side, off of the bridge. Is that something we could talk to Caltrans about, not building a separate bridge, but just essentially having something that, connects to the current bridge and, like I say, is cantilevered off? Because otherwise, what I'm worried about is during high water, people are gonna get on the road, and I could see where Caltrans would be, maybe amenable to at least chatting about something that hangs off the bridge versus having people actually on the road. I mean, yesterday there were 3 people that were cycling from somewhere in North County. I passed them coming in this morning. They were going over Slate Creek Pass. I mean, they're on the road the whole way, and I'm thinking that logging trucks, that's kind of scary. So anyway, if they had the option to go along the trail, I bet they would.
I will tell you, anything is possible. But yeah, I have not had that conversation with Caltrans about it. I think you've probably had more conversations with them regarding that than I have.
Well, we just keep asking them to move the whole bridge because it's a hazard for the fire truck and the ambulance. But anyway, so it's, yeah, I mean, do you visualize what I'm talking about, where the trail just kind of hangs off? It's like there's the
Absolutely.
trail. Yeah, okay, all right. Well,
Anything to keep people off of that super narrow blind corner bridge would be ideal.
It's a hill.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, all right. Anyway,
So
just a thought.
yeah, it's worth having a conversation with Caltrans about it. You know, after talking with the representatives from the NRA, you know, they're taking the lead on pursuing any easements or Caltrans conversations at this time. Just because, you know, I mean, the NRA is leading the project. So I don't want to overstep any bounds by starting any of those conversations. So if that makes sense. Any questions on this particular segment? Cool. This is Trinity Center boat ramp. There is an existing ditch line here that could be incorporated and converted into that ADA trail. Gives us 0.35 miles down to a really amazing viewpoint. It's actually really beautiful over there. Take a little bit of leveling out to make a really nice picnic area. I scouted that segment with some of the kids from the Weaverville Composite mountain bike team who live in Trinity Center, and they were all like super stoked about the idea of being able to get out there a little bit more easily. The ditch line is all intact through here. So again, it would just require expansion and widening to comply with ADA standards. The kicker would be the segment to connect the ditch line to the parking lot. It's pretty steep through there, so it would definitely require a pretty significant retaining wall. My initial estimate is about 150 feet of retaining wall that will probably require some engineering, it'll probably require some engineering. So that would be the most significant portion of this project, is just connecting the parking lot to the trail itself. But otherwise, it's intact and ready to go.
So there's a lot more squiggles on that map than the map that you presented to the trail subcommittee. All the little purple lines at the top. What do you have in mind there?
Yeah, these are kind of concept lines. This is one of the only spots that we have not ground truth fully yet. We're having some trouble figuring out how to cross this drainage. It's pretty significant. And so I have a field day scheduled on Tuesday to go and check that out and nail down exactly what we're going to do in that specific area. With the idea of trying to connect the ADA trail and give an option for the community of Trinity Center to have a single track trail that's right outside of town. So folks don't feel like they have to go up to the Sisson-Callahan or down to Weaverville in order to find or, utilize the segment of existing lake trail that they've hiked 100 times. Trying to provide some variety and some options for that community.
So, one comment, the kids are still out there throwing sticks off the ditch. I mean, they're so excited. And then, I had a question from one of the equestrian horse owners in town, whether or not horses could do that trail.
Oh, absolutely. I've never seen any restrictions on ADA compliant trails that say other users can't use it. So it would still be open for equestrians, bicyclists, hikers, all the above, with, of course, lots of signage saying that you must yield to those who need it.
I think you've just created a business there. I mean, people in town are thinking, oh, trail rides. anyway.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to add one more thing. So just for the group as a whole, the bike team that was at Clark Springs, a couple weeks ago, there were 25 kids there doing the Lakeshore Trail, and 11 of them were from Trinity Center. I mean, it's a big thing for the kids up there to have a place to go where the parents don't have to drive them to.
Yeah.
Parents will love you. Go ride your
Love
bike.
that. Cool. Any additional questions? I know we're running close to noon. Any additional questions on this one?
Jack, would this not be a part of Trinity Camps? Would this have to be separate if it's not in that project area?
It's
Yeah,
part of
this would
the-
be separate. This area and the ridge line are all part of Highway 3 fuel break.
Yeah,
And so the connecting parcel of Forest Service would have to be separate.
So
But
it's
we
sort
would
of-
want to prioritize this segment of trail because it's gonna accommodate the greatest potential number of users.
but we have asked that this area be included in the Highway 3 project because we're trying to get the Forest Service to spin around the boat ramp, which is our safety zone. So as far as I know, this area would be in the Highway 3 project.
It's possible that I don't have the most up-to-date shape file for that, so I can work with my team and see if they have something that fills in that gap.
Okay, because we talked to Callan about this, about including, that was one of on our list.
Field trip.
Yeah, on the field trip, this was our list of things from the fire department and the CSD that we wanted to see included in Highway 3. So,
I can just send Callan a quick email
I do see the
regarding
boat.
that parcel.
I think I see the boat ramp in there,
yeah, this is,
but past
Yeah.
that, not.
So the dark green is not,
The dark green was a
Yeah.
part of the different fuels project, Jack, right?
That is just a Forest Service parcel that I do not have. I don't see any fuel break coverage in that area.
Gotcha, thanks.
But I'll shoot Callan an email regarding that parcel. All right, I just have a couple more slides here. This is just kind of the overall project with the dream of connecting Stony Point Campground to Covington Mill and then to Alpine View. Focusing primarily on the Lakeshore Trail with these numbers. This segment down here has NEPA coverage already, but we're not trying to do anything in that area until we talk with Caltrans, but we just don't want this culvert crossing to continue to be the sticking point that doesn't let anything else happen out here. But so if we incorporate the connection to Stony Point Campground, you get almost 22 miles of trail through there. If we don't, we still get almost 21 miles, including the existing segment of trail all the way up to Covington Mill, all on a very mellow grade for the most part. There's of course going to be a couple little climbs in there, but that's, to me, that's like a destination. You could get almost a 42-mile bike ride in there. You could start having marathons along the lakeshore. Like, there's a lot of opportunity to bring folks in. And the introduction of a 1-mile connecting trail between Bowerman Barn and Alpine View. Try and keep folks off the road a little bit. And to clarify, these numbers do not include the loop above Hayward Flat in this instance.
so if you come down the ditch line on the east side of Guy Covington Drive, from East Fork of Stewart's Fork down to Alpine, The nice thing about that is you can connect to the ADA trail that's existing around the Bowerman Barn. If you come down the west side of the road, then people have to cross the road. But if you come down the east side, then you're gonna tie right into that and hopefully get credit for that ADA loop stretch.
That would be great. Yeah, I'll try and incorporate that into the shapefile there. Should be pretty quick. So this brings us back to that slide again of, what does this group want to see? Like, what should we do our best to convince the NRA to keep in this project? What are your priorities out of all the options that we talked about? If we have to limit it, what do we want to limit it to is really the biggest question.
And by keeping it in, we mean keeping it in to have the NEPA done, correct?
Yeah, in the scope.
Correct.
Yeah.
Laura, do you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt Jack's question though. So if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Well, so the subcommittee had 3 priorities. So tell me if this matches what you're proposing, Jack. It was to extend the trail 16 miles from Clark Springs to Alpine View. It was to include that Hayward Ridge loop, and it was to add the new Trinity Center boat ramp loop. So that's what the subcommittee identified as the priorities. And just so the group knows, we talked about a bunch of different other trails up at KOA, from Preacher Meadow into Trinity Center. There was a whole bunch of other options that we talked about, but those 3 were what the subcommittee identified as the priorities. So hopefully, does that match what you're asking, Jack? I mean, if we wrote a letter to the for the collaborative to pass on to the Board of Supervisors that said we'd like to have those 3 priorities included in the Highway 3 project scoping, would that be mesh with what you're talking about?
It would, absolutely. Yeah, which is really why we focused pretty hard on ground truthing the segments that we did. Yeah, that meeting definitely influenced where our target areas were.
Okay, Laura, do you want to, you got something completely different or what would?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to provide I mean, this is anecdotal, but down in Reading, we have a trail called the FB Trail. That is a long trail, non-motorized, mountain bike, hiking, running kind of thing. And ultimately, like, people do use it, but it doesn't provide a great experience. It's just like a long trail that you can be on. So I just would urge, like, it is, I think, enticing to be like, oh, we can connect this and connect that and whatever, but I don't know. It's just frustrating managing a trail that is so long, and it does take work to manage like that whole mileage, and then the like bang for the buck out of that trail, I don't think is really there. So just as you're looking at these like long kind of connector trails between areas of interest, it adds a lot of workload in operations and maintenance, potentially not for a lot of benefit. But I know this is a different setup, with, I don't know, it's a different situation, but I just wanted to provide that experience that we have.
Well, I think it's more modeled on something like the Lake Tahoe Trail where, there's a trail that goes the whole way around Lake Tahoe. And this, if someone wanted to do this, like Jack was saying, you can bike pack, you can go from campground to campground, do 20-mile stretches. And you can do the whole, east side of the lake, campground to campground. So, yeah. There
Yeah,
were tons of bikes on cars this summer and they're looking for places to go. And they can't go up in the Alps, those trails aren't mountain bike friendly.
They're allowed.
Yeah, they're not allowed. So it can't be up in the wilderness area. So where are they supposed to bike around here? They create their own trails around the lake.
okay, yeah, again, it's not a one-to-one comparison. I totally get that. But just as you're thinking about, providing trails for like the kids around town to ride on, like those kind of long, monotonous trails are probably not going to be the most popular for that part that you're trying to
That's what
target.
That's why
So-
that one is a loop. That's why that one goes from
Okay.
Trinity Center boat ramp and is a loop. I mean, right now the kids are driving down the airport, along the brush and the airport, along the lake for their mountain bike training. So talk about, that is really boring.
Okay, just a real quick time check. We are kind of right at
Yeah, and I do have to leave.
at the end here. So any other comments, Jack, or anything you need to kind of move this forward?
If I could, please.
Sure, Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Jack and the committee for all the time and effort and time outside that went into getting us to this point. I think this is a really fantastic starting point for our conversation. And it's really nice to have specific areas that we can be honing in on and evaluating as we move into the next phase of our North Trinity County project. And I appreciate your time going out in the field with my staff also to look at this more specifically and let us get eyes on it together and be kind of co-creating this. So thank you for that, Jack and the team. The kind of criteria and factors that we're looking at as the Forest Service remain pretty much the same. It's going to be that once we get the most recent, which maybe we have, and I just don't know it, so don't take this as anything, but just my own being busy with the fire. But the latest, most up-to-date data from Jack and the Watershed Center is going to be asking our engineering folks and our trails folks to just do our Forest Service ground truthing, getting Mike McFadden involved with our planning team, and having those specific conversations about which segments we can carry forward with North Trinity County and which may need to be part of another project. But what we are able to do now that we even just have Jack's what they have already is we are looking at our contracts for botany and seeing if we can just pull in those segments already to just get botany coverage. And that should be something we can do. So whether or not this is included, whether or not any particular segment is included, it's going to have some botany coverage. It's going to have that good starting point for a survey. And the sticky wicket, as always, is going to be ARC heritage. And what's so funny about trails, funny in a ironic way, not funny in a ha-ha way, is just that those ditches that are such a great trail feature are then the challenging heritage feature. And so we just need to figure out as much specific information as we can get on where these ditches are and if they have existing heritage review, that all helps us move this forward and have those segments be meaningfully considered as part of North Trinity. So I'm saying this is very much the beginning of the conversation, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into it, and we're going to keep working it and keep looking at it.
Cool.
And thanks for trying to include this trail into the project. I mean, I could not imagine trying to do this as a separate project entirely. I just don't think it would ever don't think it would ever happen. So it's pretty amazing to try and think about including this into a bigger project that the Forest Service is absolutely like very invested in community wildfire protections. And we've seen evidence of trail projects being incorporated into stuff like this before, especially in Weaverville. So it's really cool to see that continuing throughout the Shasta Trinity in different ways. So thank you very much. And, you know, none of this is going to be constructed overnight by any means. So if it needs to be like phased approaches to it, we absolutely totally support and understand that. And, you know, as you know, Laura also mentioned it of like how many people are going to utilize that full length of the trail all the time. Probably not a very large number of people, but we can focus our efforts on some of those higher use campgrounds and connecting Covington Mill to Hayward, getting that ridge loop above Hayward, and the boat ramp could add, you know, 12.5 miles and be widely used and accessible for maintenance as well.
Okay, any further discussion?
No, I think we just need the consensus from the Recreation Committee to go ahead and write the letter for the full collaborative's consideration.
Yeah, I think we're there. Any opposition? No, not seeing any. So yeah, I think we do have consensus and agreement that we want to move forward with what Jack has presented here. So we'll get that drafted up. Jack? Yeah.
Sounds great.
And,
Yeah, I'll reach out to Pat and Carol and make that happen. I kind of wish Ross was in the room right now, but we'll let him know.
Yep, you bet.
Jack, thanks for a great presentation.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And all that work, yes.
yes.
Hey, Jack, could you
Thank the crew.
send me that PowerPoint? I thought that PowerPoint was very
Yeah.
helpful.
I can absolutely share that with you. I can share it with the whole group if you'd like. But yeah, and I think Callan and Todd should have the trail shapefile as well. But yeah, I'll make sure that gets to you.
And Sarah, I don't think, did you get the minutes? I can't remember from our meeting. I sent them to Callan and
You did.
did, okay,
Yeah,
None.
I got the minutes from the subcommittee meeting.
okay.
Okay, I think we can move through our partner updates pretty quickly because many of them aren't here. So, yeah, I don't see Amanda, so I don't think we're gonna get a report there. Trinity Trails, Jack, anything on, in addition?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to be talking for half of this meeting. But from a TTA perspective, we've started planning for the LaGrange race, which is going to be happening on June 14th, which is super fun. So mark your calendars. It always needs tons of volunteers, and we had 140 racers last year, so hopefully we can increase that number as well. Trying to convince the committee to include sweepstakes in that to try and draw more folks in because it's just an awesome trail. TTA is working on becoming more of a public facing organization again, trying to do more community events and hikes and that type of thing. If you'd like to be on our mailing list, shoot me a quick email. You can send it to my Watershed Center email address or my Trinity Trail Alliance email, and I'll be happy to get you included in on those announcements. Yeah, we applied for a grant through the International Mountain Biking Association to put trail counters on the ground, but we were not awarded. They awarded 2 organizations across the entire US. So what can you do?
Yeah.
But we're going to keep on trying so we can capture as much trail user data as we can. Cool. Any questions on the TTA front?
Nope.
Sweet.
Okay.
What was the date again? Sorry for the trail race.
June 14th.
Okay, watershed research, Jack, did you have anything there?
I do. I'm going to try and blow through it all pretty quick here. So feel free to stop me if you have questions about specifics. With the American Trails Legacy Roads and Trails funding, we worked with Ascend, the Forest Service, the Smart Center, and Siskiyou Outdoor Recreation Alliance based out of Mount Shasta. to work on 2 different trails. We've reopened 6 miles of the Sisson-Callahan Trail in the Trinity Headwaters area, from the Trinity River all the way over to Kangaroo Lake up in the Klamath National Forest. Really beautiful. It's an alternative hiking route to the PCT. Bunch of really amazing meadows through there and lakes and creeks. It's really neat. So if you're looking for more of like a rugged experience than the PCT offers, Sisson-Callahan is a great opportunity. We'll be out there again next year to help connect that historic trail all the way from Lake Siskiyou to Kangaroo Lake. With that same funding, we also worked on East Weaver Lake Trail. And for the first time in, I don't know how long, at least a decade, you can now navigate successfully from East Weaver Campground all the way up to East Weaver Lake in the Alps. It's a big hike, but so be prepared for that. But it is open and navigable and free of trees, which is really neat.
Okay.
We're working with the 6 Rivers, the Mad River Ranger District, on reopening the Hayfork Ruth Trail, which is a single track OHV trail that was damaged during suppression efforts during the August complex. Where our goal is to have that reopened completely next fall, but we were out there and we reopened the alignment, cleared it of vegetation over the last couple of weeks. Probably the most exciting piece of news in recent development is the expansion of the Ewing Reservoir trails. We, as of yesterday, just completed a second loop around the reservoir. So the amount of single track trail open to non-motorized users is now up to just shy of 5 miles. It's 4.97. And if you include the graveled access road around there, there's now 7.2 miles around the reservoir. Beautiful oak woodland. And especially the fall colors right now, it's amazing. I was just blown away when I was out there yesterday. So that was really cool. Reading Trail Alliance came up and ran our equipment for us. It was really, really awesome. And then the next big step that the Watershed Center's got coming up is we're going to start on the LaGrange ditch expansion. Try and get rid of some of the switchbacks. Actually get rid of all the switchbacks that are on SBI that are terrible, and reroute it mostly on contour up the East Weaver Creek drainage. So we're going to get started on that and work until we run out of funding, which will be about middle of December. That's all I got.
Okay, Jack, anything for Jack? Thank you very much, Jack. A lot going on. Okay, obviously Kelly is not here, so I don't know that we have a RCD report. Any others? Not seeing any. Agenda building, anything we want to see on next meeting's agenda? Okay. I think we're there. Thank you all for your presence and participation and excellent presentations. Yeah, by Jack and Monique. Very, very good. Very informative. Yeah. So thank you all again. We are officially
The
adjourned.
collaborative agenda, do you know if PUD is gonna give a summary of the RAP project for the collaborative next?
I spoke with Paul, and the anticipated release of the public document today, it is been postponed.
Oh, I was just.
So his best guesstimate at this point is February.
February.
So that will be the announcement we make next week.
Thanks. After the holidays.
It will be a short presentation, and he is still of the opinion that he doesn't see the value in him showing up until that document is released.
Got it,
Yep.
got it.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Monique. So yeah, we need to,
We should chat about that. I'm so sorry. I have to go to the.
yeah,
I have to go. For sure. Meet with somebody.
okay.
Supplies.
Because in the past,